There is a moment every homeowner recognizes. A neighbor finishes their landscaping, and suddenly the street looks different. The house that used to blend into the block now commands attention. Cars slow down. People stop and look. The yard has done something that paint and furniture and every interior renovation cannot do. It has changed the way the house presents itself to the world. Not with expensive hardscaping, not with a landscape crew. With shrubs, the right shrubs, chosen for the right reasons, planted once and left to do what they were born to do. Most homeowners spend their landscaping budget on the wrong things. Annual flowers that need replacing every spring. Mulch that disappears by fall. The right shrub planted in the right location becomes more valuable every single year. Larger, more beautiful, more dominant in the landscape with every passing season, without asking for much beyond the soil it was planted in. 13 shrubs are on this list. Every one of them transforms the way a home presents itself from the street. Every one of them is available at garden centers across America. And make sure to stay until the very end of this list, because the 13th shrub on this list is one that almost no American homeowner is using in their front yard. And once it is seen in full bloom, the reason it belongs on every residential street in this country will be immediately obvious. Shrub 1. Endless Summer Hydrangea. The neighbor stopper. There is no shrub in American horticulture that stops foot traffic the way a hydrangea does in full bloom. The flowers are simply too large, too vivid, and too extravagant to walk past without pausing. A mature, endless summer hydrangea in July carries mophead blooms the size of softballs in shades of blue, pink, and purple that shift depending on the soil chemistry around the roots, an effect so beautiful and so apparently effortless that neighbors who have never asked about plants before will start asking. This is the shrub that generates more compliments per square foot of garden than almost anything else available in American retail. And it generates those compliments year after year without requiring the kind of intensive care that most people assume a plant this spectacular must need. What makes endless summer so revolutionary in the hydrangea world is the reblooming capability that its name promises and actually delivers. Traditional hydrangeas bloom once in early summer and spend the rest of the season as attractive foliage plants. Endless summer blooms on both old wood and new wood, meaning it produces flowers continuously from June through the first frost, carrying the garden with fresh blooms every time a spent flower head is removed. Smart gardeners know that a single plant of endless summer can produce dozens of individual bloom cycles across a single season, giving the front yard a continuously fresh and spectacular appearance through the entire summer and into fall. Hydrangea color responds to soil pH, shifting toward blue in acidic conditions and pink in alkaline ones. Aluminum sulfate applied in early spring pushes toward blue. Garden lime pushes toward pink. Either way, the display it delivers makes every dollar spent look like 10 when the blooms arrive. Plant in morning sun with afternoon shade for the richest color and the freshest foliage through summer. Shrub 2. Knockout Rose. The rose that requires nothing for decades. Roses had a reputation that kept many gardeners away. Complicated pruning schedules, disease problems, pest pressure, the constant cycle of spraying and treating and monitoring that seemed to be the unavoidable price of growing the most beloved flower in the world. Knockout changed all of that. This rose, introduced to American gardens in 2000, and now the best-selling shrub in United States history, produces its flowers with a cheerful disregard for the conditions that defeat other roses. No spraying required. Minimal pruning needed, drought handled with ease. Heat shrugged off without a second thought. The gardener who plants Knockout gets everything a rose promises and is asked for almost nothing in return. The bloom production of Knockout is staggering by any measure. The plant produces a new flush of flowers every 5 to 6 weeks through the entire growing season, from May in most of the country straight through November in warmer zones. Each flush covers the plant so completely in cherry red, pink, coral, or yellow blooms that the foliage underneath almost disappears. In the landscape, A mature knockout rose in full bloom is a statement plant that dominates the space around it and reads from a considerable distance, from across the street, from a car window, from the sidewalk 2 houses away. It is the kind of visual presence that makes a house look cared for, loved, and expensive without actually requiring the effort or expense that impression suggests. Disease resistance is the superpower that sets knockout apart. Black spot, the fungal disease that forces weekly spraying on traditional roses, simply does not take hold the same way on knockout foliage. Plant in full sun, water through the first establishment season, and let the plant run. It blooms, rests briefly, and blooms again for years, without asking for more than basic attention once or twice a season. Shrub 3. Viburnum, the four-season backbone every. Great landscape needs a backbone, a structural plant that provides form and presence through every season, not just during its brief window of peak bloom. Viburnum is that plant, and it does the job with a grace and a seasonal range that almost nothing else in American horticulture can match. In spring, it covers itself in clusters of white or pink flowers that fill the surrounding air with fragrance. In summer, the dense green foliage creates a lush architectural presence in the landscape. In fall, the berries ripen into jewel-like clusters of red, blue, or black that feed migrating birds while simultaneously adding ornamental interest that most gardeners never expect from a shrub they originally valued for its spring bloom. And in winter, the structure of the bare branches and the persistence of some berry clusters gives the landscape a presence that keeps it looking intentional even in the coldest months. Smart gardeners know that viburnum is one of the hardest working plants available at any price point, and it asks very little for that performance. Once established, a process that takes one full growing season of adequate moisture, viburnum handles drought, heat, cold, and neglect with the kind of resilience that makes experienced gardeners wonder why they spent so many years using lesser plants in the same locations. It does not need deadheading. It does not need annual pruning beyond the occasional shaping. It does not need feeding beyond what the surrounding soil naturally provides. It simply grows, seasons itself through the year, and gets more impressive with every passing season. Double-file viburnum creates the most dramatic spring display, horizontal tiers of white flower clusters with a layered, architectural effect unlike anything else in American retail. Korean spice adds fragrance so intense it drifts through open windows. Arrowwood builds the tallest form, doubling as privacy screening and wildlife habitat. Across most of the country, at least one viburnum species performs beautifully in every garden. Shrub 4. Drift rose, the ground-level color machine. Drift roses occupy a space in the landscape that most ground covers aspire to but never quite achieve. They cover the ground with dense, weed-suppressing foliage while simultaneously producing a continuous carpet of flowers through the entire growing season. Where ground covers offer foliage and the occasional modest bloom, drift roses offer the same ground coverage, plus the flower production of a full-scale rose shrub compressed into a package that stays under 2 feet tall and spreads up to 4 feet wide. The effect in the landscape is of a low, flowing river of color that moves through the garden at ground level and spills over the edges of walls, pathways, and bed borders with an effortless, designed quality that looks expensive because it is, in fact, genuinely beautiful. The color range available in drift roses covers the full warm spectrum: coral, red, pink, peach, apricot, and white, with each color producing the same prolific bloom performance and the same 5 to 6 week bloom cycle that makes knockout roses so popular in the same landscape, because they stay low and spread wide rather than growing tall and upright. Drift roses are the ideal shrub for spaces where height would create a problem: the strip between the house and the sidewalk, the slope that needs stabilization and color simultaneously, the front foundation bed where anything taller would block windows. They solve the practical problem of covering ground while solving the aesthetic problem of maintaining continuous color at exactly the scale that the landscape requires. Once established, drift roses handle summer drought, intense heat, and root competition with the reserves of a true woody shrub. They come back every spring, spread a little wider than the previous season, and begin their bloom cycle again without being asked. For the homeowner who has been replanting annual ground covers year after year, drift roses are the permanent solution. Stay right here for a moment, because this is the exact midpoint of this list and the perfect time to say something directly to the homeowners watching this video. If the front yard has never quite looked the way it deserves to, if the neighbors whose houses seem to sell faster, whose homes seem to command more attention on the street, whose yards seem to require less work while looking like more money was spent, the difference is almost never the house itself. It is the plants in front of it. The right shrubs, placed correctly, transform the first impression that a home makes on everyone who passes it. That transformation is available to every homeowner watching this video, with plants that are sold at garden centers right now. Drop a U.S. state or hardiness zone in the comments. There are gardeners in the same region making the same decisions about the same shrubs, and what works in one Zone 6 garden almost always works in another. Shrub 5, Spirea. The effortless flowering cascade Spirea in full bloom is one of the most joyful sights. Available in the American spring garden, thousands of tiny flowers, clustered so densely along arching branches that the individual blooms become invisible and the entire shrub appears to be draped in a continuous white or pink cascade. The effect is of something that required significant effort and expertise to produce. The reality is that Spirea is one of the most self-sufficient shrubs available at any garden center, requiring almost nothing to produce a display that makes every dollar of its modest purchase price look like $20 of landscape. Value: the varieties that deliver the most consistent landscape. Impact include bridal wreath Spirea for the most dramatic arching white spring bloom, gold mound for the year-round golden foliage that glows in the landscape even when the plant is not in flower, and magic carpet for the compact size and the red-orange new growth that provides color from the moment the plant leaves out in spring. Smart gardeners know that mixing 2 or 3 Spirea varieties in the same planting creates a staggered bloom season and a year-round color interest that individual plants cannot achieve alone. The combination of spring bloom, summer foliage color, and fall leaf color makes Spirea one of the most versatile 4-season performers in the shrub palette. After the spring bloom, a light shearing triggers a second flush of foliage and sometimes a secondary midsummer bloom. This single task, minutes on a mature plant, keeps the shrub looking shaped and intentional all summer. From Minnesota to Zone 8, Spirea comes back every spring looking better than the year before. Shrub 6, Boxwood, the structural foundation. Plant in landscape design history has done more to make residential yards look expensive than boxwood. The dense, fine-textured, evergreen foliage that takes and holds any shape a gardener gives it has been used for centuries to create the formal structure that makes gardens look designed rather than planted. The clipped hedges, the defined bed edges, the matched specimens flanking an entry that signal care and intention from the moment they come into view. A pair of boxwoods flanking a front door transforms the entry of a house in a way that almost nothing else achieves, creating a sense of symmetry and formality that makes the house look larger, more established, and more valuable than the house next door. Without the matched specimens, what makes modern boxwood selection so valuable for the American homeowner is that the disease problems that plagued older varieties, boxwood blight, boxwood decline, have been largely addressed through the development of resistant cultivars that maintain the traditional aesthetic without the traditional vulnerability. New Gen Independence, Sufruticosa Improved, and the Sun King series all offer the dense, dark green foliage and the shape-holding capability that makes boxwood so valuable in the landscape while providing significantly improved resistance to the diseases that cause so many gardeners to abandon the genus in the first place. These are not the boxwoods that gave the genus its problematic reputation. They are a new generation of plants that deliver the classic look with modern reliability. Once or twice a year, a light shearing keeps boxwood in whatever shape it was given: balls, squares, tight hedges, loose mounds. It holds the shape until the next session. For gardeners who have never clipped a shrub, the first time a boxwood responds by looking like something from a formal European garden is a genuinely satisfying moment. Shrub 7. Panicle hydrangea, the summer to fall. Spectacular while mophead hydrangeas are the most famous members of their genus, panicle hydrangeas, Hydrangea paniculata, are arguably the most spectacular and certainly the most adaptable to the challenging conditions of the American summer garden. The cone-shaped flower heads that give this species its name emerge white or cream in midsummer, and then undergo one of the most dramatic seasonal color transformations available in any garden plant, deepening through pale pink to deep rose to antique bronze as summer gives way to fall. A single plant provides months of changing color that tracks the seasons in real time, making the garden feel dynamic and alive in ways that static color never achieves. The most celebrated selection, Limelight, begins its bloom season with flower heads the color of pale green chartreuse, an unusual and sophisticated color that reads as expensive and intentionally chosen in the landscape before the summer pinks and fall bronzes arrive. The mature size of Limelight, 6 to 8 feet tall and nearly as wide, gives it the presence of a small flowering tree rather than a shrub, creating a focal point in the landscape that dominates the surrounding planting and draws the eye from considerable distance. For homeowners who want a single plant that transforms a front or side yard from ordinary to remarkable, Limelight panicle hydrangea is frequently the right answer. Unlike mophead hydrangeas, panicle hydrangeas bloom on new wood every season. Spring frosts, harsh winters, and aggressive pruning do not interrupt the flower production. The plant cut back hard in early spring still blooms abundantly in July. From the coldest northern gardens through Zone 8, it delivers its summer to fall spectacular without fail. Shrub 8. Japanese pieris, the evergreen showpiece most. Evergreen shrubs earn their place in the landscape through reliability rather than beauty. They stay green, they provide structure, and they ask very little in return. Japanese pieris earns its place through beauty, and the beauty it delivers in early spring is unlike anything else available in the evergreen shrub palette. The new growth that emerges in March and April arrives in shades of vivid red, copper, and bronze, colors so intense and so unexpected on a plant this time of year that the shrub appears to be flowering when it is actually leafing out. The dangling clusters of white urn-shaped flowers that open simultaneously add a delicacy to that burst of spring color that makes the combination almost impossibly beautiful for a plant that is, at its heart, simply an evergreen shrub doing what it always does in spring. The year-round presence that Japanese pieris provides in the landscape is the quality that makes it such a valuable investment for the front yard. Unlike flowering shrubs that have a peak moment and spend the rest of the season receding into the background, pieris is always doing something interesting. The new growth emerges with color in spring. The flower clusters open through spring. The mature foliage provides a deep, glossy green presence through summer and fall. And through winter, the plant holds its evergreen structure, while the flower buds for the following spring are already visible on the branch tips, providing an awareness of what is coming that gives the winter garden a sense of anticipation. In a foundation planting or a mixed border, pieris provides continuity that holds the entire design together through every season. Pieris performs best in acidic, organically rich soil, the same conditions that favor rhododendrons and azaleas. Partial shade to dappled sun produces the richest color and most abundant flowering. From Zone 5 through Zone 8, it rewards the gardener who chooses the right location with decades of four-season beauty. Shrub 9. Forsythia, the first color of spring every. neighborhood in America has a forsythia moment in late March or early April, the moment when the first burst of pure yellow appears on branches that were completely bare the week before, and the entire street seems to take a collective breath of relief that winter is actually ending. Forsythia is the plant that provides that moment, and it provides it with a generosity that no other early spring shrub approaches. The flowers open before any foliage appears, covering the arching branches so completely in bright yellow that the shrub seems to radiate light on gray March days. In the landscape, a mature forsythia in bloom is a statement that can be seen from a block away, declaration that the garden is back and the growing season has begun. What experienced gardeners appreciate about forsythia beyond its spectacular spring performance is the speed and ease with which it establishes and expands. A forsythia planted this spring will have doubled in size by next spring, reaching its mature dimensions within 3 to 4 seasons and producing a bloom display within 2 seasons of planting that makes it look like it has been in the ground for decades. For homeowners who want an immediate landscape impact without waiting years for a slow-growing shrub to reach its potential, forsythia provides the fastest return on investment of almost any woody plant available at the garden center. After the spring bloom, forsythia becomes an attractive, dense green shrub through summer and fall. The one thing most gardeners get wrong: prune immediately after bloom, not in fall or winter. Forsythia blooms on old wood. Fall pruning removes next year's flower buds. Pruning right after bloom gives the entire growing season to produce the growth that carries next year's flowers. Shrub 10. Weigela. The Hummingbird Hotel, Weigela, is the shrub that experienced gardeners reach for when they want abundant color in late spring and early summer, and they also want to turn their yard into a hummingbird destination that operates without any feeders, without any sugar water, and without any maintenance beyond the plant's own bloom production. The tubular flowers that cover Weigela in May and June are shaped precisely for hummingbird feeding. The long, flared form that accommodates the hummingbird's bill and tongue, while efficiently delivering nectar in the quantities that keep the birds coming back day after day. A mature Weigela in full bloom is a hummingbird magnet that operates entirely on its own biology, and the activity it generates in the yard makes the garden feel alive in a way that no ornamental plant without this ecological function ever quite matches. The modern Weigela selections available at American garden centers have advanced dramatically from the simple, pink flowering species that previous generations knew. Wine and roses pairs deep burgundy black foliage with rose-pink flowers in a combination that provides ornamental interest through the entire growing season, not just during the bloom period. My Monet stays compact and low, with variegated pink and white foliage that provides four-season interest in small spaces. Spilled wine spreads low and wide, making it ideal for slopes and large ground cover applications where the burgundy foliage creates a color carpet even when the flowers are not present. Smart gardeners know that choosing a Weigela for its foliage as much as its flowers means choosing a plant that earns its space in the landscape through 12 months of the year. Like forsythia, Weigela blooms on old wood. Prune immediately after bloom, not in fall. Beyond that, the shrub asks for almost nothing. Drought-handled, soil conditions flexible, pest pressure minimal. From Zone 4 through Zone 8, it blooms, attracts hummingbirds, and gets more beautiful every season. Shrub 11. Oakleaf hydrangea. The native beauty. Oakleaf hydrangea quercifolia is the American native shrub that delivers everything gardeners love about hydrangeas while adding 3 seasons of additional interest that imported hydrangea species simply cannot provide. The cone-shaped white flowers that open in June are striking on their own, up to 12 inches long in the largest selections, nodding under their own weight in the most spectacular midsummer display available in the native plant palette. But the flowers are just the beginning. As summer progresses, the flower heads age from white to parchment to deep rose bronze. a transformation that creates months of color from a single bloom cycle. The leaves, which inspired the common name with their deeply lobed oak-like form, turn brilliant shades of burgundy, orange, and scarlet in fall. The bark of mature stems exfoliates through winter to reveal cinnamon-colored inner bark that glows in low winter light. There is truly no season when oakleaf hydrangea is not doing something beautiful. The ecological value of oakleaf hydrangea in the American landscape extends beyond its visual contribution. As a native plant, it supports specialized native bees and butterflies that have evolved alongside it and that cannot find equivalent resources on non-native ornamental shrubs. A yard that includes oakleaf hydrangea is a yard that participates in the local ecology in a way that benefits the entire neighborhood, creating habitat and food resources for insects that in turn support the birds and other wildlife that make a garden feel genuinely alive rather than merely decorative. For homeowners who want their landscape to look beautiful and function ecologically, oakleaf hydrangea achieves both goals simultaneously without any additional effort. In the shade that defeats most flowering shrubs, oakleaf hydrangea performs with confidence, blooming in dappled shade, partial shade, and morning sun where others decline. For the shaded front yard or the bed under mature trees where nothing with flowers seems to grow, this is the answer the landscape has been waiting for. From Zone 5 through Zone 9, it grows more spectacular every season. Shrub 12, Itea, the fragrant summer. Surprise Itea virginica, Virginia sweet spire. Tiark is the shrub that stops gardeners in their tracks in July, not because of its visual impact, which is considerable, but because of its fragrance, which is extraordinary. The long, bottle-brush-like white flower spikes that appear in midsummer carry a honeyed, intensely sweet scent that drifts through the garden on warm evenings and fills the yard in a way that most flowering plants never achieve. Walking past a mature Itea in full bloom on a July evening is one of those sensory experiences that makes gardeners immediately want to know what the plant is and where to get more of it. The answer for most of the country is the local garden center, where Itea sits largely overlooked in the shrub section, waiting for the gardener who knows what it can do. The fall color that Itea produces is as spectacular as any shrub available in American horticulture, and it arrives before most gardeners expect it, beginning in September, earlier than most woody plants, and deepening through October into shades of red, burgundy, and scarlet that rival the best autumn foliage available in the entire plant kingdom. In the landscape, a mature Itea in fall color is a fireball of red that reads from considerable distance and transforms the autumn yard in the same way that its summer fragrance transforms the summer garden. A shrub that offers extraordinary fragrance in July and extraordinary color in October is a shrub that earns its space. Twice in a single season, Itea tolerates wet soil conditions that rot most shrubs, performing at pond margins, rain gardens, and chronically moist low spots. It handles partial shade while still delivering full summer flowers and fall color. Once established, it handles drought with native resilience. From Zone 5 through Zone 9, it returns season after season as one of the most underappreciated shrubs in American horticulture. Shrub 13. The one most front yards are missing. Camellia, the winter flower that changes everything. This is the plant that was promised at the beginning of this video, and it deserves its position at the end of the list because what it does is genuinely unlike anything else on this entire list. Every other shrub here blooms in spring, summer, or fall. The seasons when blooming is expected, when the garden is in its natural active phase, when flowers are the predictable expression of the growing season. Camellia blooms in winter. In December, January, and February, the months when every other plant in the American landscape is dormant, bare, and waiting for spring, certain camellia varieties are covered in perfect, rose-like blooms in shades of red, pink, white, and coral that look so improbable against the gray winter sky that people passing the yard stop and stare. Not because the flowers are unusual for a garden plant. though they are extraordinary by any standard, but because flowers in February feel like a miracle in a neighborhood where every other yard shows bare branches and brown grass. A mature camellia covered in deep red flowers in January transforms the house behind it into the most interesting property on the street. The curb appeal that a summer bloomer provides for 3 months, a winter camellia provides for the 3 months when curb appeal is most unexpected and most dramatic. The hardiness of modern camellia selections has expanded the range of this plant far beyond the deep south, where it has always thrived. Cold, hardy varieties developed specifically for northern climates. Winter's star, April remembered. The Ackerman hybrids survive temperatures well below zero and bloom reliably through winter in Zone 6 gardens and in protected locations into Zone 5. For homeowners in the Mid-Atlantic, the Carolinas, Georgia, the Gulf Coast, the Pacific Northwest, and California, camellia is a garden plant with a century of proven performance. For homeowners in Zone 6 who have been told that camellias are not for their climate, the new cold hardy selections say otherwise. Plant in a sheltered location with morning sun and afternoon shade, provide well-drained acidic soil, and then watch the plant that blooms in February turn the neighborhood's attention to one house above all others on the coldest days of the year. 13 shrubs. 13 permanent ways to change how a home presents itself to the world. Every one of them gets more beautiful every season. The front yard that earns compliments every time someone walks past does not require a professional crew or an unlimited budget. It requires the right plants, planted once, and left to become what they were always going to be. If this video helped, hit subscribe to join this gardening community and watch the next video on screen to keep transforming the yard into something the whole neighborhood notices.